Hi, yesterday's Herald, getting round to Adam Tomkins, who is in his lawerly mode. His headline, "The Nationalists Lose Whatever the Court Decides." Well, that's Tory Adam Tomkins talking, and that's his conclusion. But he offers it as a lawyer. But let's see what he actually has to say, because he has a number of important clarification points to make, which broadly I agree with. I just don't agree with where he thinks it leads. But then his politics don't take him into that area. So let's look at the start. The bill and the debate and the Supreme Court and all that kind of stuff. Adam says, effectively, that the key question is, does a bill which authorises not independence itself, but a referendum about independence, relate to the reserved matter of the Union? And that's clearly the legal tests the court must be deployed to answer that question are set out in the Scotland Act. The Scotland Act was designed to limit Scotland's devolution, limit its powers. In effect, devolution was designed to destroy the independence movement. But we'll leave that, stick to the wall at the moment. So Adam goes on to clarify important thing. There are two important tests, relevant tests: purpose and effect. Option one, as he sees it, was whether the measure relates to reserved matters depends on its purpose, and having regard to its effect in all the circumstances. In other words, is the referendum bill designed to achieve Scotland's independence, or merely to ascertain the mood of the nation and the electorate, and thereafter, whatever the outcome, it does not change the constitution of the UK in itself. Option two is for the justices to rule as the UK government would like them to rule, namely that the purpose of an independence referendum is to prosecute the case for independence, which relates to the reserved matter of the Union, and the effect of an independence referendum is to determine whether the Union continues or not. Thus, both the purpose and the effect relate to the matter of the Union, which the Scotland Act reserves to Westminster. So Adam says the outcome is effectively totally predictable, and it's game, set and match. The Supreme Court will say no. I believe the same thing, perhaps driven by different reasons. He goes on to say the Lord Advocate has accepted, this is our side of the case, Scotland's side of the case, the Scottish Lord Advocate, has accepted that the purpose of any independence referendum cannot be to secure independence. Independence itself would require its own legislation, lots of it, in fact, in Holyrood and Westminster. And that's true. And it's true in a sense of any referendum. That the referendum is to determine the will of the majority of the people on a key question, in this case a vital key constitutional question. It does not in itself bring about independence any more than the Brexit referendum deciding on leave brought about immediately leaving the European Union. The fact is the European Union legislation permitted it explicitly to do exactly that, but it took the British government 2.5 years really to get round to it and straighten out a few points. There was never any doubt that the European Union would let Britain leave the European Union if they were determined to do so. The only question was the terms of leaving. That ought to be true of an independence referendum, but we may take leave to doubt. And Adam recognises this. In this respect, independence is just like Brexit. Brexit was not secured by the 2016 referendum. It was secured only years later by legislation enacted by Parliament and by agreement with the European Union. Right, got that? Agree with that too. But there's an option 3, that the Scottish Parliament can hold an indyref2 without Westminster's consent, but only on the understanding that the purpose of the referendum is simply to ask voters to express a preference. Well, as I understand Nicola, the SNP's position, and the Yes movement, that is exactly what their purpose is. And I may be wrong here, but I think Nicola has recently confirmed that. As, for example, they would in an opinion poll. In other words, the referendum is a highly structured, highly significant opinion poll. It does not actually in itself produce action. However, Adam then goes on to what is the Unionist worst nightmare, that such a referendum would take place. And he says, were such a referendum to take place, it would be so hollowed out of meaning, it would amount to nothing more than an empty stunt. Those opposed to it would simply ignore it, refusing to have anything to do with it. There would be no campaign. The Unionist parties and their supporters would boycott the whole thing, and the SNP would look ridiculous. Well, part of that may well be true. The Unionists might well boycott it. The question is, where does that leave the status of the outcome of the referendum? The fact is, in any kind of democratic exercise, whether it be election or not, those who decide not to vote or abstain have no say in the outcome, and the election stands. If a large block of the electorate decides not to vote in a general election, or as a largish block, albeit minority, tends to do it in local elections, doesn't vote, it doesn't affect the outcome and the meaning. If you opt out of democracy, if you opt out of stating your view, you do not invalidate the process that attempts to ascertain it. And that's my view. I'm not a lawyer. Well, he then moves into typical Tory Adam, which is a perfect right to be, which leaves only one question, really. Given that the Nationalists must know all of this, yes they do, Adam, why have they brought the case to the Supreme Court in the first place? They cannot win here, so why do it? Well, they do it because Nicola wants to put beyond any doubt whether the Westminster accepts Scotland's mandate and right to call a referendum legally. Nicola is a lawyer, she wants to do things legally, she wants to do them right and proper, but she can't say that they wouldn't do that and speculate until she tests it. And it may have been a bit expensive to test it, and the outcome may be known, but that test is judged by Nicola to be a necessary prelude to what comes after it. And therein lies the rub for the Unionists and for the Nationalists in deciding what does come after it. So Adam concludes with one paragraph, one sentence. One day, perhaps they, that's the Nationalists, me, and Yes supporters and the SNP and the Greens, one day perhaps they will realise that for years now they have been taken for a ride. And in that he means taken for a ride by Nicola Sturgeon. Well, that he falls from his high pedestal, which I'm happy to say he occupies in some respects as a rational, respected lawyer, member of the Scottish legal community, and reverts to the, forgive me Adam, the gibbering Tory. Bye.